A random tweet about Cardano nearly made me spit out my coffee. It hinted at a secret advantage hiding in plain sight, and I just had to investigate. Now, I am an ADA holder. I have been for a while, and I'll admit that I've mostly just been hodling and staking, not really using any kind of fancy DeFi applications or anything. Now, Cardano has always been that kind of slow and steady project in my portfolio. Meanwhile, I'd watch things like Ethereum and Solana, having all of the fun with crazy DeFi yields and NFTs. And I'd wonder, am I missing out by sticking with Cardano? So, picture this. It's late night. I'm doom scrolling on X, formerly known as Twitter. We all call it Twitter anyway these days. And I see this post from a guy named David. And he's basically saying that Cardano has this huge advantage over other blockchains thanks to something called the eUTXO ledger model. Now, I'm no developer. So when I see jargon like eUTXO, my eyes, they do glaze on over. But he claimed that Cardano can do everything that Bitcoin does in terms of security, and then run smart contracts like Ethereum. Now that kind of made me do a bit of a double take, right? Everything that Bitcoin does, plus the DeFi stuff. Now, if that is true, it's a pretty big deal, right? So at that moment, my curiosity went through the roof. I felt like I had stumbled onto an overlooked secret. Why wasn't anyone, or at least everyone, screaming about this from the rooftops, right? And I knew that I needed to just dig on deeper here for my own sanity as an ADA holder. So I grabbed another cup of coffee to actually drink this time, not to spit out, and I went into full research mode. Now I'm talking late night Googling, right? Poking around forums, even hopping into our free educational Discord server to see anyone, at least if anyone else, was freaking out over this eUTXO thing. Now, what I discovered on that little late night adventure not only blew my mind, but also gave me a whole new appreciation for Cardano. And trust me here, by the end of this story, you might just look at your ADA bags a little bit differently too. Now, I'm going to break down what I learned in plain English here, because I sure needed it explained simple myself. Now, you've probably heard of how Bitcoin works, right? It uses something called the UTXO, right? Which stands for Unspent Transaction Output. It's a fancy term, but think of it like dealing with cash, right? When you spend money with Bitcoin, it's as if you're handing over some specific bills and coins. Those are your UTXOs. And if there's change, you get a new, smaller bill back. Right? Your wallet balance is basically just the total of all of those unspent bits of crypto cash that you have. Now, this system makes it super hard to cheat. Like, you can't spend the same $10 bill twice, because once it's actually spent, it's gone and accounted for. That's why Bitcoin is so secure and nobody kind of double spending any coins. Now, Cardano, it uses extended version of that system called eUTXO. Extended how, you might imagine? Well, imagine those same kind of crypto bills and coins, but now they actually carry a mini program or conditions that go with them. Sort of like each bill has a little smart note attached that says how it can be used. Now, this is kind of what allows Cardano to do smart contracts and DeFi stuff while still using the UTXO style ledger. In simple terms, Cardano basically took Bitcoin's rock solid simplicity is security approach and gave it an upgrade so that you can also do really cool tricks like Ethereum, or at least what Ethereum does with DeFi, NFTs, you name it. And here is the kicker. Because Cardano stuck with this UTXO style design, it inherited Bitcoin's strengths, security, reliability, and preventable double spends, and it can execute many transactions in parallel. So think of Ethereum's accounting model like one single file line at a bank teller, right? While Cardano's eUTXO is more like having multiple lanes at a checkout, right? Everybody can go at the same time with less waiting on each other, right? That's the theory, at least. And it means that Cardano could potentially scale much better without sacrificing the security. It's no wonder that David was pretty hyped, right? Now, he was basically basically saying Cardano can do everything that Bitcoin does, plus a whole lot more. So when I kind of wrapped my head around that, it kind of felt like finding out my reliable old car actually had a secret turbo mode. Now, this eUTXO capability was actually added to Cardano in 2021 during the Alonzo hard fork. Now, I remember the excitement around that time. That's when Cardano finally got smart contracts. But full disclosure, that's when it first rolled out. It wasn't exactly smooth sailing at that point. Developers had to learn this new way of doing things, which was a little bit different from Ethereum's approach. It took some time for projects to figure it out. There was even a whole bunch of FUD back then about claiming Cardano couldn't handle that many transactions at once because of this eUTXO model. Critics were saying stuff like Cardano can't do DeFi. It can only do one transaction per block, which turned out to be overblown. Still, those early days were kind of quiet for Cardano decentralized applications. I was sitting there with my ADA, staking away, thinking, okay, where are all of the cool apps everyone promised? I even kind of flirted with other blockchain networks out of sheer impatience. I'll admit, I dabbled with some Ethereum, and I even got a bit of Solana just to see what the hype was about. It was fun at first. Who doesn't love a good old degen yield farm at 2 a.m. in the morning, right? But the high fees on ETH and Solana's occasional network outages reminded me that the platforms, they weren't perfect. Meanwhile, Cardano was steadily improving in the background, just not making a big splash yet. Part of me was like, maybe Cardano's just the tortoise in the race. Boring, but, dependable. One day, it'll pay off, I hope. Now you can fast forward today, at least to today, and things are starting to get rather interesting for ADA again. Even Charles Hoskinson, the founder of Cardano, the guy who has the glasses and the colourful shirts, well, he has been super bullish about where Cardano is heading. Now, he acknowledged that they actually were slow to the decentralized application party, and even admitted that Cardano lost ground to faster movers like Solana at one point. But he insists that the race is not over. Hoskinson has this quiet kind of confidence that Cardano's careful approach will ultimately win the technological war. He's even gone on record saying that he thinks Cardano could eventually outpace Ethereum and become a big threat to Bitcoin's dominance in the longer run. Now, when I first heard that, I was like, okay, Charles, that's a pretty bold statement. Biggest threat to Bitcoin? Really? It sounded a little bit like a kind of typical crypto founder kind of bravado. Then I connected the dots with what I learned about eUTXO and all the upgrades coming down the pipeline, and I started to see where that confidence is actually coming from. Cardano's been rolling out improvements like Hydra, which is aimed at speeding up the network big time by allowing certain transactions to happen off-chain, kind of like giving Cardano multiple faster lanes. And there's also something called the Leos in the works, another upgrade that could make the core network even more efficient for complex decentralized applications. Basically, the devs haven't been twiddling their thumbs. They've been busy making sure that when Cardano goes big, it can handle the load. The more that I read, the more that it felt like Cardano has been this sleeping giant. Sure, it took the kind of sweet time in hitting puberty, but, we waited years for these smart contracts after all, but now it's had a kind of growth spurt, if you will. The network's robust, it's secure, and little by little, the ecosystem is flourishing. DeFi on Cardano is actually happening. Right? I've kind of peeked at some of Cardano dexes like MinSwap, and to my surprise, people are using them and liquidity is growing. It's not Ethereum level madness yet, but it's real progress nonetheless. And guess who else is noticing? Bigger players, apparently. There's talk of a US Cardano spot ETF possibly coming down the line, and yes, an exchange-traded fund for ADA, so that regular people can buy in with their retirement accounts or whatever. So if that ever gets approved, oh boy, you can imagine the influx of money and attention. Plus, institutional money seems to be slowly warming up to Cardano. Now, I read that some funds are considering adding ADA to their portfolios, seeing it as a sort of dark horse with solid tech. Now, for the longest time, Bitcoin and Ethereum got all of the institutional love. But if Cardano keeps proving itself, that could change. change. Now, this is the part where people start thinking, great, so ADA's gonna moon, right? Well, hold on to your horses. Now, this might just shock you, but I'm not a financial advisor, and nothing in this video is financial advice. Cryptocurrencies are highly volatile, and you could lose all of the money that you invest. You should always do your own research and consult a qualified professional. After all, your investments are entirely your responsibility, and you should know that nothing is ever guaranteed when it comes to investing. Neither I, this channel, nor YouTube are liable for any losses, and this video is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Alright, with that reality check out of the way, let's talk about ADA's price journey and where it might be going, because come on, we're all curious. Now, if you've been around, you know ADA has been on a roller coaster. I got in on the last actually a little bit earlier than the previous bull run back in 2020, and it was pretty wild. ADA shot up during 2021 up to around $3 at its peak, making a lot of early believers very happy. I remember staring at my portfolio in total disbelief after that run. It kind of felt like vindication. All of those months or years of patience were finally actually paying off. But then, as crypto tends to do, the euphoria turned into agony. 2022 swooped in and ADA tumbled down, losing like 80% or more of its value from the top, watching it go from around $3 all the way down to 22 cents, as I had predicted. It was a very rough time. I definitely had a few moments of why am I still holding this during that time. But here is the thing, I didn't sell, partly because I'm stubborn of course, partly because I believe in Cardano's long-term vision, and maybe partly because I didn't want to lock in the losses, if I were being real, that is. Instead, I just kept on staking and even buying a little bit more when I felt like everyone else had given up, right? My one saving grace during all of these downturns was the staking rewards. Hey, if the price was down, at least I was accumulating more ADA automatically. In fact, I eventually even started my own Cardano stake pool. Ticker symbol is CHEEK, shameless plug alert. I did set it up, so that fellow ADA holders could delegate to my pool and we'd all earn little rewards together. It's been really cool seeing the community support it, plus it feels good to actively contribute to the network. So if you are holding ADA and you're not delegating already, or to at least a stake pool, or you're probably kind of leaving free ADA, and you are basically leaving free ADA rewards on the table at that point. It's kind of like having a rewards kind of credit card, but never actually cashing in on the points, right? So whether it's my CHEEK pool or any other kind of pool that you trust, you do yourself a favor and lock in to staking, or at least look into it. It's not actually locked in for any period of time. It's very fluid. It's essentially the easiest way to actually make your ADA work for you, and you still get to keep full control of your funds whilst you're doing it. Now, how about all of those price predictions floating around then? The crypto folks of their wild forecasts, right? Now, I've heard everything from ADA will go back to $3 in the next rally to ADA will be $10 or $15 in just a year or so. Easy, right? And of course, some people throw out some insane numbers like $100 just for the shock value. Just look, could ADA really reach $5 or $10 someday? Possibly, yeah, right? If Cardano truly becomes a top tier platform and sees Ethereum level adoption, then I think it could even go further. I could see eventually hitting some of these loftier targets. Ethereum's market cap went into the hundreds of billions at its height, and if Cardano really does deliver on being an Ethereum killer plus more, then the $5 to $10 or even $15 to $30 ADA isn't completely out of the question in my humble opinion. Speculative talk, of course, especially, I guess, if something like an ETF opens the floodgates for big money. But I'm not here to hype up unrealistic scenarios, however you want to dream them up. Just because something could happen doesn't mean that it will, of course. I'm keeping my expectations in check. Now, a more grounded prediction that I've seen some analysts talk about is ADA may be going between $2 and $3 in the next bull run if things line up pretty well. Basically retesting the previous all-time high and maybe just a little bit above. That alone would still be pretty massive win from the levels that we had seen at around 22 cents, or something in that range. It changes a little bit daily, but I would be plenty happy with that kind of growth. Anything beyond just that is a bit of a bonus, right? So on the flip side, it's also possible that ADA just kind of hangs out and only grows rather slowly, especially if the broader market underperforms or if Cardano takes longer than expected to hit certain milestones. Maybe the ETFs get denied. So I'm kind of mentally preparing for all of the outcomes here. These days, my strategy is pretty boring. It's just a dollar cost average, a bit more ADA when the prices come on down, and I keep everything I have staked, right? And if the price stays low, great, I'll stack up some more. And if it starts climbing, well, my holdings are gaining value. It's a win-win, as long as I believe in the tech and the long-term vision. And after really digging into Cardano's fundamentals, I've got to say, I'm more convinced than ever before that I should at least have some ADA in my crypto mix, right? To scratch my itch for action, I do still trade a little with a small portion of my portfolio. You've got to have some fun on the side, right? Now, I usually use BitGet for those kind of trades, and I've got an affiliate link down in the description. So if you do go ahead and click on that link, it does support the channel here at no extra cost to yourself. So thank you if you do that. But whether you're trading or just holding, I've learned to not overextend or chase the pumps blindly. Crypto will humble you real quick if you do. So as I kind of sit here reflecting on all of this, I've got to say, that random tweet did me a bit of a favor. It pushed me to actually understand one of Cardano's biggest strengths instead of just mindlessly kind of holding the token. Now, I'm kind of feeling kind of reinvigorated about my ADA now. Cardano's approach to at least of carefully balancing security with cutting-edge functionality is kind of like the best of both worlds. It's the whole slow and steady wins the race vibe, but with at least a modern twist. Now, I kind of feel like I've been on a little adventure with Cardano over these years, from the very early days with nothing much was actually happening to the crazy bull run peak, through the despair of the bear market, and now into this phase of quiet confidence. And if this eUTXO thing and all of the upgrades do pan out, the next chapters could get really exciting. Imagine a blockchain with the security of Bitcoin, the versatility of Ethereum, but faster and more energy efficient than both. Well, that's kind of what Cardano is aiming for here. And even if kind of it gets halfway there, it could shake up the crypto landscape. And a lot of skeptics will be eating their words. Ultimately, whether Cardano will fulfill all of its promises is still up in the air. Crypto history is full of big promises and mixed results. But now you know why a lot of us are keeping the faith with ADA. Right? For me, learning about the eUTXO and Cardano's unique edge reminded me why I got into this project in the first place. It gave me that spark of hope and excitement again. Maybe the underdog really can surprise everyone. Who knows? All I know is that I'm going to be here, sticking with my ADA, staking it, and watching this story unfold. And I'll definitely be sharing any new discoveries with you guys along the way. So if you found this useful, informative, make sure to smash that like button for me, hit the subscribe button for more crypto adventures, and I will catch you all in the next one.